Sahar Aziz is the director of the Center for Security, Race and Rights at Rutgers University Law School. She joins us now. Professor Aziz, by New Year's Eve this year, do you expect there to be a new Trump-named justice on the court?
It's unclear because there's a lot at stake for the Republicans. You've got at least 7 senators, Republican senators, who have a toss-up election, and the polls are also starting to show that Biden is leading, Biden and Harris. And therefore, if McConnell overplays his cards and pushes through a nomination or attempts to, he may end up mobilizing the Democratic base to vote him out, McConnell as well. He's also up for re-election in Kentucky, and 7 of his colleagues, including Susan Collins and Chad, someone in Colorado, someone in Iowa. There are multiple senators that are up for re-election in a really tight campaign.
Corey Garden, I think, in Colorado, isn't he? It matters whether this nomination happens before November or after November. To explain to viewers, after November, there is a 2-month period in which the existing Senate is still in session. That's 2 months. Historically, that is enough time to name and confirm a justice in that so-called lame duck period.
Yes, and that is probably more likely, again, because I think it's very risky for McConnell to push this through before November. However, the Democrats have started to threaten that if they win the Senate, and they already control the Congress, and they win the White House, that if the Republicans play dirty, then they're going to vote to expand the Supreme Court and add 2 more seats, which would give Biden 2 more nominations. Because if McConnell pushes through a conservative, and it will probably be a very conservative justice, you're going to have a 6-3 court that will always rule in favor of conservative interpretations of the Constitution, which is the most conservative court since before the New Deal. And that's going to bring in some questioning of the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, not only because it's going to be so slanted towards conservatives, but because of the means in which this 9th justice is going to be nominated and selected. And ironically or hypocritically, the Republicans, Lindsey Graham in particular, and others, said in 2016 when Antonin Scalia died and Obama had an opportunity to fill the vacancy, they told him it is inappropriate for you to do so during election year, even though Scalia died more than 200 days before the presidential elections that year. And now Lindsey Graham is calling for nomination, selection, and essentially seating a new justice or replacement justice before November.
You talk about the Democratic possibility of expanding the court. 70, 80 years ago, that was known as packing the court under Franklin Roosevelt, and that met intense opposition then. Might it not be likely to meet intense opposition now?
Well, the people who will oppose it would be the Republicans. It won't be the Democrats. I think this will be a nuclear option. And if McConnell pushes and pushes this nomination through, then I think the Democrats are going to have a lot of support, a lot of popular support. I think there will be protests. Trump's administration and his tenure has already been very polarizing politically, and as we've seen with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the Muslim ban movement, with all of these various protests that we've had with the Me Too movement, there is a large swath of Americans who are extremely unsatisfied with his current administration. And so if McConnell pushes this through the Senate, it's going to be seen as just another example of overreach, government abuse, and leaning towards authoritarianism. But this time, it's going to be the Supreme Court's legitimacy that's at stake. And that harms every American, because then every ruling that comes out of that court isn't going to have the legitimacy it needs for people to respect the law and respect rule of law. So I hope that the moderate Republicans and the reasonable Republicans will think very carefully before they follow McConnell, and that they will consider not only their own political interests, but the interests of preserving the court's legitimacy within the eyes of the American public.
Professor, if you could make any changes to the nomination and confirmation process, what would they be?
Well, I hate to say this, but we may need to bring back the filibuster. So it was the Democrats that removed the filibuster under Obama, although they didn't remove the filibuster for the Supreme Court. That was the Republicans in 2017.
This is the idea of having a 60-vote supermajority in the Senate, is that right?
Yes, and what that does is it ensures that you don't have these really tight votes in the Senate that are 53 or 50 53 to 47 or 54 to 46. And then when you have these important decisions, whether it's legislation or whether it's appointments of executive branch officers, that you have some buy-in from the other side, even though it's not going to be more than 10 people, but at least you won't have this runaway majority, especially when it's a very small majority.
There are two candidates that have been discussed widely in the media, Judge Amy Coney Barrett and Judge Barbara Lagoa. They're both conservative judges. Surely it would be a good thing for a woman, another woman, to get promoted to the Supreme Court. How would you object to that?
Well, if there's one thing we've learned in this feminist movement that's been going on in the US and in Europe and other countries, is that it's not simply about having a woman. It's about having a woman who's committed to women's rights in a meaningful way. And the real issue here is Roe v. Wade. It's the right to abortion, which is really about the right to privacy and the right to autonomy over a woman's body. You're also going to have same-sex marriage that might be reversed. You also will have challenges to the healthcare laws. And so we're at a point in American history where it's not enough just to have a woman. We need to have a woman who's committed to gender equality in a meaningful way, whether she identifies as a conservative or she identifies as a liberal. And so I think that this is essentially going to be tokenizing and playing gender identity politics in a way that will not help women overall.
Professor Sahar Aziz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.